Zoey was bullied by rival fans. Seconds later, she silenced everyone with just one sentence. The air in the Roaring Twenties themed nightclub, the Gatsby, hung thick with anticipation and the cloying sweetness of Prohibition-era cocktails. Flapper dresses shimmered under the dim, Art Deco lighting, and the brassy sounds of a live jazz band fought to be heard over the excited chatter. Tonight was the official after-party for the National Collegiate Debate Championship, and tension crackled beneath the veneer of celebration. Zoey, a petite figure in a dazzling emerald green dress that accentuated her fiery red hair, stood near the edge of the dance floor, clutching a half-empty glass of sparkling cider. She wasn't a drinker. Debate was her addiction, her passion, her escape. And tonight, her team, the Crimson Comets from Crestwood University, had narrowly lost to their arch-rivals, the Golden Griffins from prestigious Harrington College. The sting of defeat was still fresh, a bitter taste that no amount of cider could wash away. The Griffins, notorious for their aggressive debating style and even more aggressive fanbase, were out in force. Their victory had only amplified their already considerable arrogance. Zoey had tried to avoid them, knowing that any confrontation would only exacerbate her disappointment. But fate, or perhaps the Griffins' own insatiable need for validation, had other plans. A group of 4 Griffin supporters, all clad in Harrington's signature gold and black, swaggered towards her. Their leader, a hulking figure named Brad, whose voice seemed permanently amplified, grinned maliciously. Well, he boomed, his words cutting through the music like a shard of glass. If it isn't little Zoey from Crestwood. Looks like your comets got clipped tonight. Guess all that facts and logic you guys preach wasn't enough to beat good old-fashioned Griffin grit. Zoey tried to ignore him, to melt back into the shadows. But the other Griffins closed ranks, effectively boxing her in. Yeah, Zoey, chimed in a blonde girl named Tiffany, her voice dripping with saccharine condescension. Maybe you should stick to, I don't know, knitting? Debate is clearly not your forte. A wave of heat flushed Zoey's cheeks. She hated being the center of attention, especially when that attention was hostile. She knew that engaging with them would only escalate the situation, but their taunts were starting to chip away at her carefully constructed composure. We were robbed, muttered Mark, another Griffin supporter, his eyes narrowed. Everyone knows the judges were biased. Crestwood always gets preferential treatment. That was the last straw. Zoey's hand tightened around her glass. The accusation of favoritism was particularly galling. She and her team had poured their hearts and souls into preparing for the championship. To have their efforts dismissed as mere luck or, worse, favoritism, was unbearable. Oh, I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Were you saying something? I couldn't hear you over the sound of your team's blatant logical fallacies. Brad and Tiffany exchanged amused glances. Ooh, feisty, Brad said, taking a step closer. Still clinging to that debate jargon, huh? Face it, Zoey, you lost. Accept it and move on. The music seemed to fade into the background. All eyes in their immediate vicinity were now on them. Zoey felt trapped, cornered, and utterly humiliated. The other Griffins began to jeer, their words a cacophony of insults and derisive laughter. Cry baby. Loser. Go back to your little Crestwood bubble. Zoey's vision blurred. She wanted to disappear, to be swallowed up by the floor. She felt the familiar sting of tears pricking at her eyes. She had always been sensitive, easily overwhelmed by confrontation. That's why debate had been so appealing. It allowed her to channel her emotions into structured arguments, to fight with words instead of fists. But now, faced with the raw, unfiltered hostility of the Griffin fans, she felt completely helpless. Suddenly, a hand landed heavily on Brad's shoulder. A towering figure, a security guard with a stern face and a no-nonsense demeanor, loomed over them. All right, break it up, he growled, his voice low and menacing. No trouble in here. Take it outside if you have a problem. The Griffins, momentarily taken aback by the security guard's intervention, reluctantly backed down. Brad shot Zoey a final, venomous glare before leading his pack away. Zoey stood there, trembling, feeling the weight of their animosity pressing down on her. The security guard, after ensuring the Griffins had moved on, gave her a sympathetic nod and disappeared back into the crowd. The reprieve was temporary. The whispers and stares continued. Zoey knew she couldn't stay here. She needed to escape, to find a place where she could gather her thoughts and regain her composure. She turned to leave, but as she did, she bumped into someone. It was Ethan, her debate partner and closest friend. He had witnessed the entire exchange. His face was etched with concern. "Zoey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine worry. Zoey shook her head, unable to speak. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Ethan gently took her arm and led her to a quieter corner of the nightclub, away from the prying eyes and judgmental whispers. He sat her down on a plush velvet bench and handed her a clean napkin. He didn't say anything, just allowed her to cry. He knew that sometimes, silence was the best comfort. After a few minutes, Zoe's sobs subsided. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. I hate them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're so arrogant and mean." Ethan nodded. "I know. They can be pretty brutal. But you can't let them get to you, Zoey. You're stronger than they are." "I don't feel strong," she said, her voice cracking. "I feel like I want to run away and never debate again." Ethan looked at her intently. "That's exactly what they want you to do. They want to break you, to silence you. Don't give them the satisfaction." He paused, then added, "You know, Zoey, you're one of the most brilliant debaters I've ever met. You have a way of cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of the matter. You can't let those bullies dim your light." His words, spoken with such sincerity and conviction, resonated with Zoey. She knew he was right. She couldn't let the Griffins win, not just in the debate, but in life. She couldn't let their negativity extinguish her passion. She took another deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and looked Ethan in the eye. "You're right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I won't let them win." Just then, the DJ announced that the winning team, the Golden Griffins, would be making a speech. A spotlight shone on Brad as he swaggered onto the small stage. He grabbed the microphone and grinned at the crowd. "All right, everyone," he shouted, his voice booming through the nightclub. "I just want to thank all the Griffin supporters for their unwavering support. We couldn't have done it without you. And I also want to say..." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Zoey. "That sometimes, you just have to accept that you're not good enough. Some people are winners, and some people are losers. And tonight, the Comets learned a valuable lesson about where they belong." The Griffin fans erupted in cheers and applause. Zoey felt a surge of anger, but this time, it was different. It wasn't the helpless, overwhelming anger she had felt before. This was a controlled, focused anger, fueled by a desire to prove them wrong. Without hesitation, Zoey stood up, her emerald green dress shimmering under the spotlight. She walked towards the stage, her head held high. Ethan tried to stop her, but she shook her head, a determined glint in her eyes. She reached the stage and stood beside Brad, who looked at her with a mixture of surprise and disdain. She didn't ask for the microphone. Instead, she simply raised her voice, projecting it with all the force she could muster. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and steady, silencing the cheers and quieting the music. "The only lesson we learned tonight is that winning isn't everything. True victory lies in the pursuit of knowledge, the courage to speak your mind, and the grace to accept defeat with dignity. Something you clearly know nothing about." The nightclub fell silent. All eyes were on Zoey. Brad stood there, speechless, his smug grin replaced with a look of stunned disbelief. The Griffin fans were equally dumbfounded. Zoey didn't wait for a response. She simply turned and walked back to Ethan, who was beaming with pride. As they left the nightclub, she could hear the murmurs of the crowd, some supportive, some critical, but all acknowledging the power of her words. The next day, Zoey and Ethan woke up to a social media storm. A video of her impromptu speech had gone viral, sparking a debate about sportsmanship, rivalry, and the true meaning of success. Some people praised her courage and eloquence, while others criticized her for being a sore loser. But Zoey didn't care about the criticism. She knew that she had spoken her truth, and that was all that mattered. She had refused to be silenced, to be bullied into submission. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a moment of empowerment. In the weeks that followed, Zoey and Ethan continued to debate, to learn, and to grow. They didn't win every competition, but they always debated with passion, integrity, and respect. They became known for their unwavering commitment to truth and their willingness to challenge the status quo. Zoey's one sentence had not only silenced her bullies, but it had also ignited a spark, inspiring others to stand up for what they believe in, to find their voice, and to never let anyone dim their light. She learned that true strength doesn't come from winning, but from the courage to speak your mind, even when your voice trembles. And that, she realized, was a victory worth more than any trophy. The experience had taught her that resilience wasn't about avoiding the stings of life, but about learning how to heal from them, how to transform pain into purpose. It was about finding the courage to rise, dust yourself off, and speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. It was about understanding that true victory lies not in silencing your rivals, but in finding your own voice and using it to make the world a little bit brighter. Years passed. Zoey and Ethan graduated from Crestwood, both earning prestigious scholarships to law school. They remained close friends, their shared experience at the debate championship forging an unbreakable bond. They continued to debate, now on a larger stage, tackling complex legal and social issues. Zoey's viral speech continued to resonate, often resurfacing online and sparking new conversations. She received countless messages from young people who had been inspired by her words, who had found the courage to stand up to bullies, to pursue their passions, and to speak their truth. One day, Zoey received an invitation to speak at a national conference on bullying prevention. She hesitated at first. The memory of that night at the Gatsby was still vivid, the humiliation still palpable. But she knew she couldn't refuse. She had a responsibility to share her story, to offer hope and guidance to those who were struggling. Standing on the stage, facing a crowd of hundreds of students, educators, and activists, Zoey felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the lessons she had learned. She began to speak, her voice clear and strong. "I used to think that being bullied was a sign of weakness," she said. "I thought it meant that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong. But I've come to realize that being bullied is not a reflection of who you are, but a reflection of who they are. It's a sign of their insecurity, their fear, their lack of empathy." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. "The most important thing you can do when you're being bullied is to remember that you are not alone. There are people who care about you, who believe in you, who will support you. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. And never, ever let anyone silence your voice." She then recounted her experience at the debate championship, sharing the details of the bullying she had endured and the empowering moment when she had finally found her voice. "That night," she said, "I learned that true strength doesn't come from winning, but from the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult. It comes from the ability to turn pain into purpose, to use your experiences to make a difference in the world." As she concluded her speech, the audience erupted in applause. Many were moved to tears. Zoey felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She had transformed her personal pain into a powerful message of hope and resilience. Years later, Zoey became a renowned civil rights attorney, dedicating her life to fighting for justice and equality. She never forgot the lessons she had learned from her experience with bullying. She used her voice to advocate for the marginalized, to challenge injustice, and to inspire others to speak truth to power. One day, she found herself arguing a case against a powerful corporation that had been accused of discriminatory practices. The lead attorney for the corporation was none other than Brad, the former Griffin supporter who had bullied her at the Gatsby. Brad, now a polished and arrogant lawyer, recognized Zoey immediately. He smirked at her, a hint of his old disdain returning to his eyes. He underestimated her, assuming that she was still the same vulnerable girl he had tormented years ago. During the trial, Brad tried to intimidate Zoey, using the same tactics he had used in the nightclub. He questioned her credentials, mocked her arguments, and attempted to undermine her confidence. But Zoey was no longer the same girl. She had grown stronger, more resilient, and more determined. She refused to be intimidated. She stood her ground, countering his arguments with facts, logic, and unwavering conviction. In her closing argument, Zoey addressed the jury, her voice filled with passion and righteous indignation. She spoke about the importance of equality, the need to protect the vulnerable, and the responsibility of corporations to act ethically. "We cannot allow greed and prejudice to dictate our actions," she said. "We must stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. We must ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed, regardless of their race, gender, or background." The jury was deeply moved by her words. They deliberated for hours before returning a verdict in favor of Zoey's client. The corporation was found guilty of discriminatory practices and ordered to pay a substantial sum in damages. As Zoey left the courtroom, Brad approached her, his face pale with defeat. I don't understand," he stammered. "How did you do it?" Zoey looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of compassion and resolve. "I found my voice, Brad," she said. "And I learned how to use it to fight for what's right." She paused, then added, "You tried to silence me once. But you only made me stronger." Zoey walked away, leaving Brad standing there in stunned silence. She knew that she had not only won the case, but she had also won a personal victory. She had overcome her past, transformed her pain into purpose, and used her voice to make a difference in the world. The years continued to pass. Zoey's reputation as a fearless and compassionate advocate grew. She became a role model for young lawyers, inspiring them to use their skills to fight for justice and equality. She never forgot the lessons she had learned from her experience with bullying. She continued to speak out against injustice, to advocate for the marginalized, and to inspire others to find their voice. And every time she faced a challenge, every time she felt doubt or fear, she remembered the words she had spoken that night at the Gatsby: "The only lesson we learn tonight is that winning isn't everything. True victory lies in the pursuit of knowledge, the courage to speak your mind, and the grace to accept defeat with dignity. Something you clearly know nothing about." Those words had become her mantra, her guiding principle, her source of strength. They reminded her that true victory wasn't about silencing her rivals, but about finding her own voice and using it to make the world a little bit brighter. And that, she knew, was a legacy worth more than any accolade. Her one sentence had echoed through the years, a testament to the enduring power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, a single voice, spoken with conviction, could silence the bullies and inspire a generation. Zoey's journey wasn't just about personal triumph, it was about creating a ripple effect. She established the Speak Up, Stand Strong Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing resources and support for victims of bullying and promoting anti-bullying initiatives in schools and communities. The foundation quickly gained national recognition, attracting volunteers, donors, and passionate advocates from all walks of life. One of the foundation's key initiatives was a mentorship program, pairing young people who had experienced bullying with successful professionals who had overcome similar challenges. Zoey herself became a mentor, sharing her story and offering guidance to countless young people who felt lost and alone. Through the foundation, Zoey also worked tirelessly to change the culture of schools, advocating for stricter anti-bullying policies, mandatory bystander intervention training, and programs that fostered empathy and respect. She believed that creating a safe and inclusive learning environment was essential for empowering young people to reach their full potential. One day, Zoey received a letter from a young girl named Maya, a high school student who had been relentlessly bullied for her weight. Maya wrote about how Zoey's story had given her the courage to stand up to her tormentors and to seek help from her teachers and parents. She also wrote about how she had started a support group at her school for other students who had been bullied. Zoey was deeply moved by Maya's letter. She knew that her work was making a real difference in the lives of young people. She invited Maya to speak at the foundation's annual gala, a fundraising event that brought together hundreds of supporters from across the country. Maya's speech was powerful and inspiring. She spoke about the pain of being bullied, the importance of self-acceptance, and the need for adults to take bullying seriously. She ended her speech by thanking Zoey for giving her the courage to find her voice. As Maya spoke, Zoey watched from the audience, her eyes filled with tears. She realized that her journey had come full circle. She had started as a victim of bullying, but she had transformed herself into a champion for change. She had silenced her bullies, not just with her words, but with her actions. The gala was a resounding success, raising a record amount of money for the foundation. Zoey knew that the funds would be used to expand the foundation's programs and reach even more young people in need. Years later, Zoey received an honorary doctorate from Crestwood University, her alma mater. In her acceptance speech, she spoke about the importance of education, the power of empathy, and the need to create a more just and equitable world. We all have a responsibility to use our voices to speak out against injustice, she said. We must stand up for the vulnerable, protect the marginalized, and challenge the status quo. We must never be silent in the face of oppression. As she concluded her speech, she looked out at the audience, her eyes filled with hope and determination. She knew that the work was far from over, but she was confident that together, they could create a world where every young person had the opportunity to thrive. Even Brad, her former tormentor, followed Zoey's career with a mixture of awe and regret. He had initially dismissed her as a naive idealist, but he had come to respect her unwavering commitment to justice and her ability to inspire others. He often wondered what his life would have been like if he had chosen a different path. He never publicly apologized for his behavior, but he secretly admired Zoey's strength and resilience. One evening, years after their courtroom encounter, Zoey was attending a fundraising event for a local charity. As she mingled with the guests, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Brad, looking older and more subdued than she remembered. He approached her hesitantly, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and admiration. "Zoey," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to apologize. For everything." Zoey looked at him, her heart filled with compassion. She knew that he had carried the burden of his past for many years. "Thank you, Brad," she said. "I appreciate that." She paused, then added, "It's never too late to change. To make amends. To use your voice for good." Brad nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I know," he said. "I'm trying." Zoey smiled, extending her hand. "Then let's start now," she said. "Let's work together to create a better world." Brad took her hand, his grip firm and sincere. He knew that he had a long way to go, but he was determined to make amends for his past mistakes. He had finally understood the true meaning of victory, not silencing your rivals, but finding your own voice and using it to make a positive impact on the world. Zoey's story became a beacon of hope for countless individuals who had been affected by bullying. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of empathy, and the transformative impact of finding your voice. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, a single sentence, spoken with courage and conviction, could silence the bullies and inspire a generation to stand up for what's right. And that, ultimately, was Zoey's greatest triumph. Her legacy wasn't just about overcoming adversity, it was about creating a world where adversity was less likely to exist in the first place. It was about fostering a culture of kindness, respect, and understanding, where every voice could be heard, and every individual could thrive. The echoes of that one sentence continued to ripple outwards, transforming lives and shaping a brighter future for generations to come. The ripples from Zoey's initial act of defiance spread wider than she ever imagined. The Speak Up, Stand Strong Foundation flourished, not just as a reactive force against bullying, but as a proactive incubator of empathy and understanding. They pioneered programs in schools that went beyond simple anti-bullying campaigns, focusing instead on fostering genuine connection and emotional intelligence amongst students. Role-playing exercises where students stepped into the shoes of those who were different, workshops on active listening and conflict resolution, and even collaborative art projects designed to celebrate diversity became hallmarks of the Foundation's approach. Zoey understood that silencing the bullies wasn't enough, you had to dismantle the very ecosystem that allowed bullying to thrive. This meant addressing the underlying causes: insecurity, fear, lack of empathy, and societal pressures to conform. The foundation started offering workshops for parents and educators, providing them with the tools and knowledge to create supportive environments where children felt safe to express themselves and embrace their individuality. One particularly impactful initiative was the Bridge Builders program, which paired students from different socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnicities, and even rival schools. They were tasked with working together on community service projects, forcing them to confront their preconceived notions and discover common ground. Zoey believed that by breaking down the barriers that divided them, they could create a more inclusive and compassionate society. The foundation's success attracted the attention of policymakers and government officials. Zoey was invited to testify before Congress on the issue of bullying prevention, advocating for increased funding for mental health services in schools, stricter anti-bullying laws, and mandatory training for teachers and staff. She spoke with passion and conviction, sharing her personal story and presenting compelling data to demonstrate the devastating impact of bullying on young people's lives. Her testimony resonated deeply with members of both parties, leading to the passage of landmark legislation aimed at combating bullying and creating safer schools across the country. Zoey became a national figure, a symbol of hope and resilience for victims of bullying and a powerful advocate for change. As the years passed, Zoey's influence extended beyond the realm of bullying prevention. She became a vocal advocate for social justice, using her platform to speak out against inequality, discrimination, and all forms of oppression. She understood that bullying was just one manifestation of a larger problem, a lack of empathy and respect for others. She lent her support to various causes, from fighting for LGBTQ+ rights to advocating for criminal justice reform. She believed that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. One day, Zoey received an unexpected invitation to speak at a graduation ceremony at Griffin High School, the very school whose students had once tormented her. She hesitated at first, the memories of that night at the Gatsby still lingering in her mind. But she knew that she couldn't refuse. She had a chance to reach a new generation of students and inspire them to make a difference in the world. Standing on the stage, facing a sea of unfamiliar faces, Zoey felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the lessons she had learned. She began to speak, her voice clear and strong. "I know that some of you may be wondering why I'm here," she said. "After all, I wasn't exactly a fan of Griffin High School back in the day." The audience chuckled, sensing her self-deprecating humor. "But the truth is," she continued, "I'm here because I believe in you. I believe in your potential to make a positive impact on the world. I believe that you have the power to create a more just and equitable society." She then recounted her experience with bullying, sharing the details of the humiliation she had endured and the empowering moment when she had finally found her voice. "That night," she said, "I learned that true strength doesn't come from winning, but from the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult. It comes from the ability to turn pain into purpose, to use your experiences to make a difference in the world." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. "You are the future," she said. "You have the power to shape the world in your image. But with that power comes great responsibility. You must use your voices to speak out against injustice, to advocate for the marginalized, and to create a more inclusive and compassionate society." She concluded her speech by challenging the graduates to commit to making a difference in the world, no matter how small. "Don't be afraid to take risks," she said. "Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to be different. Just be true to yourself, follow your passions, and never, ever give up on your dreams." As she stepped down from the stage, the audience erupted in applause. Many were moved to tears. Zoey felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She had not only forgiven her former tormentors, but she had also inspired a new generation of students to embrace their potential and make a difference in the world. Years later, Zoey received the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless efforts to promote peace, justice, and equality around the world. In her acceptance speech, she dedicated the award to all the victims of bullying and oppression, vowing to continue fighting for a world where everyone could live with dignity and respect. She never forgot the lessons she had learned from her experience with bullying. She continued to speak out against injustice, to advocate for the marginalized, and to inspire others to find their voice. And every time she faced a challenge, every time she felt doubt or fear, she remembered the words she had spoken that night at the Gatsby: "The only lesson we learned tonight is that winning isn't everything. True victory lies in the pursuit of knowledge, the courage to speak your mind, and the grace to accept defeat with dignity. Something you clearly know nothing about." Those words had become her mantra, her guiding principle, her source of strength. They reminded her that true victory wasn't about silencing her rivals, but about finding her own voice and using it to make the world a little bit brighter. And that, she knew, was a legacy worth more than any accolade. Her one sentence had echoed through the years, a testament to the enduring power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. It was,